All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, June the 3rd, 2021, and we actually have, at least I would say, for the second day in a row, we have quite a bit of news to cover. So let's jump right into it. This is news from all around the world, by the way. So first off, George P. Bush has announced his run for Texas Attorney General. Look, it's in the family, I guess. You know, he's not, taking too much of a political risk, if you will, with regards to running for a public office in the sense of, a governor or something like that. He probably knows he's not going to win because of the last name. Again, the Bush last name is a legacy name, just like the Clinton name. At this point, the name is tattered. It's been known to be associated with the establishment, the deep state, certain elements of the military-industrial complex, big oil, big pharma, you name it. So the move seems to be pretty conservative. At the same time, though, if that's what Mr. Bush wants in this particular case, to run for the Attorney General of Texas, maybe for more of a long-term goal, again, he has the right to do it, but we can't deny the fact that it's in the family, right? Whether you like them or not, you can't say that. You can't not say that about the Bush family. So the next thing is that Amazon and Barnes & Noble have removed the pre-order slot for Dr. Fauci's book from their websites due to the email issue, it seems, the recent FOIA dump of some of Anthony Fauci's emails. Look, again, here's the thing. Amazon and Barnes & Noble, for them to remove Fauci's book, again, even whether it's just a pre-order slot or the slot for the actual book itself, they've scrapped it out entirely, and I'm thankful that I waited a little bit in the day to record this because a lot of news surrounding this and other things broke just in the past couple of hours. So when we look at this, we have no other choice but to say, okay, is Amazon aware of something? Did they have people go through those emails shortly after they came out? And are they, a little bit ahead of the game with regards to removing Fauci's book from their website? It's hard to say. But again, if there's nothing there, then why would they remove this, right? Maybe they don't want to get caught up in the controversy, but again, you could also argue not catching yourself or bringing yourself to be involved in that controversy as a business or a company would be to keep that person's book or pre-order slot on the shelf virtually or literally, right? In this case, they removed it, so maybe they do know something. The next thing, and by the way, I am sifting through the Fauci emails. There's a bunch of different things in there that's really, some of it is, I would say, a nothing burger. A lot of it at the same time too is very, very concerning. Certain things there we could see that he may have had access to classified things and what have you, and that's a whole other story. But anyways, the next thing is that Arizona plans to execute prisoners with a lethal gas that the Nazis used at Auschwitz. So here's the thing. This is tough. This is controversial from an ethical and moral standpoint. With that being said, in the eyes of the law, it is the state's rights. From my understanding, I'm not a constitutional scholar by any metric, but the state of Arizona does have the right to do this, to bring this form of punishment back to the death penalty if they like. With that being said, do the people agree with it? I mean, look, I always stand by the same consistent, I guess we could say, perspective, if you will. If the people of Arizona agree with such a decision, then look, whether or not everybody on the outside or everyone else outside of Arizona agrees with it or not, again, it depends. Like, I mean, for example, it's like saying, should people who rape and murder children deserve to die? Again, Arizona does have the death penalty, so it seems like, in a lot of cases that's going to be the case, right? So the next thing is that Israel may be held for war crimes at the UN due to some alleged targeting of buildings that had no Hamas targets in, above, or below it. Okay, here's the thing about that. It's tough, and recently I do have to say it's been very, how can I say this? It's been very tough to report these instances without seeming like, I'm taking a side. And the reason why I say that is because unless we were there on the ground, I would say, and I do say this, don't trust me, don't trust any news outlet. It's very difficult. At the end of the day, like I said, the only people that really did suffer were the innocent Israelis in addition to the innocent Palestinians. So it's tough. Now again, the reality of things is that the United Nations will probably do what they always do. They'll take anywhere from 1 to 5 years to say, okay, is Israel an apartheid state or not? Did they violate certain human rights things? Are they a war criminal or this or that? And then what's going to end up happening? The UN may make a decision, make a vote on it, but then nothing in reality will actually happen. Again, just like anything else in life, you can have all the fancy labels, but ultimately, if there's nothing to substantiate or take action on those labels that you have now been called as a nation, as a country, as an institution, whatever, then it doesn't mean jack shit, and it's true, right? So again, because this is the ultimate sort of concept of the UN, just like many other things, like with NATO, for example, the US has the strongest pull at the UN unofficially and arguably officially as well too, right? So when we look at that, it's kind of like, okay, the US and Israel are both going to use their influence to make sure that if the UN for public appearance purposes has to label Israel an apartheid state or say they're committing war crimes or whatever, that's fine and dandy, but it's not going to be, and I'm saying this from the perspective of the ones that want to keep things hush hush, it's fine if it's done publicly, but as long as there's no literal repercussions on the state of Israel, then that's just the way it's going to go, right? So the next thing is that Qatar released a Kenyan man charged with spreading misinformation. Now, this is interesting because, again, we have to define what the country and state of Qatar would refer to as misinformation. With that being said, there's always two sides to this. If this person was in fact spreading misinformation, I'm not sure what the free speech rights are in Qatar, but I'd like to think nowadays within developed countries, again, Qatar, a little bit of debate with regards to the condition of the country, right? But overall, I will say, though, that this person should not have been jailed whether they were lying or not, or whether they knew they were spreading misinformation or not. At the end of the day, it is free speech. And again, this does, create a bit of an issue when it comes to, other countries trying to influence other nations' elections using social media. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm just saying in general, happens all the time, especially nowadays, right? It is an issue. And I do agree with that. It is an issue. But again, you can't conflate that, and there must be a line drawn with how to stop certain countries while also protecting free speech. But it is a very, very difficult issue. And again, this is one of the big problems with the technology moving faster than the culture or the accumulation of the mindset of the masses of the people of Earth, really, to be honest with you. So the next thing is that Netanyahu is going to, this is interesting. Netanyahu's plan to take charge in Israel is what some headlines are saying, basically saying that Netanyahu's political opposition, a lot of them leading this coalition, were in fact his proteges or his apprentices, if you will. Now, Netanyahu may in fact come back to being in power, and the reason why I say this is because according to people familiar with the matter, familiar with Israeli politics, the opposition coalition is formed, but it is allegedly very unstable. So, do we rule Netanyahu out? No, and I will also tell you why too. Now, I am not a full-on expert of Israeli politics, but what I do know is that Israeli politics tend to work a little bit differently than Western politics. If you lose, for example, an election bid or an election run, it's not like in the West where you're pushed away from the political spectrum and nobody talks about you anymore and that's it. In Israel, it's a little bit different with regards to the system they have set up, which I find to be quite intriguing and interesting, to be honest with all of you, which is that, again, Netanyahu, if he loses this, he still is the leader of his Likud party, which is the largest party right now in Israel. He could very well come back if the coalition it does not stay stable and is and basically falls, if the new incoming regime or incoming administration doesn't keep it together, literally and metaphorically. So it's very interesting how the way Israeli politics works. For those watching on YouTube, you see what I'm doing with my hands is kind of like the second one side's unbalanced, they throw it to another side. Now, also keep in mind too that allegedly the incoming administration is even more ultra nationalist or far right, allegedly, if you will, than Netanyahu. So So it'll be interesting to see what'll happen here. Again, some are saying Netanyahu, it wasn't so much his policies or his politics as much as it was him constantly wanting to go to war, compared to other leaders saying, we have the same views as Netanyahu except for the going to war part. There's so many different angles to this that, again, I'm not telling all of you or any of you what to think or how to feel or anything like that. I encourage you to do your own research, but ultimately this is what's happening, and the way that politics works there is quite interesting. The next thing is that global food prices are surging, again, stoking mass inflation fears. Look, again, this is the whole conversation about the American dollar and the value of the global currency, and not just the American dollar, but the euro, the pound, the yen, all that different stuff, right? So again, there's always fears from the different analysts and what have you, but the question remains, can we keep the global currency stable relative to not just COVID, but also relative to cryptos and things like that, right? It's going to be very interesting. The next thing is that the U.S. military has admitted to killing 23 civilians around the world in 2020. Again, it's difficult because the question becomes, was this intentional or not? There's also speculation that the Pentagon covers and the CIA covers up mass casualty deaths in terms of not just in the double digits, but in the triple or quadruple digits, that they deem to be militants. I know that there was recently a revelation that under the Obama and Trump administration, I will say, to be fair and consistent, any innocent or people who were deemed not to be terrorists or threats that ended up being killed from drone strikes and bombings and what have you were deemed to be just, I think the term was casualized militants or just simply militants, something like this. But again, they were realistically just innocent people. With that being said, this comes down to the philosophy of a militaristic approach, which is that, if you have, for example, 20 people in a house in anywhere in the world, it's a house filled mostly with terrorists. Out of those 20 people, for a fact, if you're, say, the US government, for a fact 15 out of those 20 people are terrorists, but you don't know which of the 5 are the innocents. This comes down to a militaristic mindset, and it's true. Ethically and morally, it's not good. But the question becomes this: do you go in there and just kill them all? And just, you fix the problem. Doesn't matter if there were 5 innocent people. We eliminated the target. Too bad there were innocent casualties. They shouldn't have been in a house with terrorists, right? The other view is, well, we don't know if these innocent people are there by force or if they're there because they want to be there. So let's go in there and try to figure out who's who. It's 2 very different approaches, right? And I would dare to argue, again, I could be wrong, but I would dare to argue that many countries have used both approaches to this very day, depending on the situation, depending on the objective, depending on the mission, right? The next thing is that AMC cinema chain, the movie chain, issues a warning to small investors saying that they're overvalued because now AMC is jumping up again. I don't know if it's thanks to Reddit this time. I don't want to say that for certain, but for those of you who have made any profit again this time around, or if you eventually do make profit or if you plan to, I wish you nothing but the best because, again, I'm all for the little guy making money, right? The next thing is that Apple wants its staff back in its offices by September. Okay, so this is interesting. Now, I bring this up because I've known that, in Silicon Valley, tech companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, even before COVID, for years, they never really cared where you did your work as an employee of their company, as long as you got it done by the deadline they gave you. I know, like at Google, for example, they have all these slides and playrooms and couches for you to take naps on and stuff. Again, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's all fine and dandy, but the concept is that the more comfortable you are, the more productive you are. And I think that's true to to a certain extent. I think some people, they prefer going into the office because it gets them into that working mind frame. Some people just cannot work from home. Others can hunker down at home and say, okay, I'm going to take, the next X amount of hours to do this for work, and that's it. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because Apple seems to be more of they're a hardware and software company, right? Google is much more software focused. So for Apple saying they want their employees back in the offices, I can understand, because when you're collaborating on developing a physical product, it's much more effective. Even with all the forms of communication these days, it's much more effective, I would still say, to collaborate in person than if you were on like a Zoom call or something like this, right? And I agree with that fully. Now, with that being said, when it comes to developing software, probably a little bit of a different story. I know some of you who watch the show are in fact software developers, so you could probably tell me in the audience better than anyone that when it comes to developing software, it's probably a little bit easier, right? Similar to how we're doing the show now with the members episodes. We produce an episode and then we throw it into the Dropbox, right? It's the same idea. You can check it out in the Dropbox, and as long as you have the link, you can view it. Could be the same way that software is being shared, not using Dropbox. I'm just saying as an example, using a forum where employees can dump their finished product of software, their code, inside of a forum or a portal, if you will. Which is why, like I say, collaboration in person, I still think no matter how good technology gets, nothing is going to beat it. But, we'll see what happens. Unless they have that type of hologram thing like they do in Star Wars where, sometimes they could, I think, definitely holograms where it feels like they're in the room with you, but it'd be interesting if there'd be like a physical manifestation or a robot underneath that hologram, so it's sort of like you're there, But anyways, the next thing is that Navy submarines commanded by artificial intelligence have recently been confirmed to be real. Now, I know for years we've known that AI has been powering certain tanks, and the military and DARPA has been testing that for God knows how long, but, it's interesting to see it come into real life practice. Certain submarines and things like that carry extremely advanced weaponry are being entrusted by artificial intelligence. Now, you might be saying, Dave, what do you mean entrusted by artificial intelligence? How do you trust AI? Well, you'd like to think that you program the thing, right? Now, again, this is the whole scare issue, if you will, the fearful issue about AI, right? If it starts to think for itself and it realizes that human beings are the ones that are, arguably destroying the planet more than any other creature, what happens, right? Sort of like a Terminator type scenario. And this is unfortunate. So I also think, as of the time I'm recording this, Elon Musk's girlfriend, her name is Grimes, I think, recently said something about how artificial intelligence will lead to communism if it starts to think for itself, or something like this. Don't quote me on that. But the next thing is that a former MI6 head says that China will have lab evidence destroyed or made to disappear in a very convenient manner as it pertains to COVID and the Wuhan lab leak. Yeah, no shit. So I'm just going to move on from that. The Secret Service agent who helped cover up and protect and aid Hunter Biden during a drug and prostitute-filled binge is now a CEO at a private security firm. So the Hunter Biden text messages in the laptop leak, for those who saw where it showed Hunter Biden, it didn't, there were pictures, but also him texting a Secret Service agent because he wouldn't leave his hotel room because he was binging like crazy on drugs and things like that. And the Secret Service agent says, listen, I'm getting calls from Washington every hour. Where are you? This and that. That particular agent is now the CEO of a private security firm. Maybe because of how he handled the Hunter Biden situation. I honestly don't know. But it's interesting to see nonetheless. The next thing is that, let's take a look here. Biden's going to meet with the Queen soon. I hope Prince Andrew's there. I just want someone to yell rape in the background. But anyways, I don't know what else I can comment about Biden meeting with the Queen. Big whoop, Nothing. It just shows nothing's changed. The next thing is that recently released records show that Buckingham Palace, so the Queen, the royal family, banned ethnic minorities from having roles in the office of Buckingham Palace. Look, and we're surprised at that for what? Why? Why are we surprised at that? Why? Because who is it? William said the other month, he said, we are very much not a racist family. But who the fuck believes that? I mean, it's just a joke. Anyways. The next thing is that calls are growing in Canada to actually dig up all or most residential school grounds to see what's under those grounds. Not just the one, this is because of the 215 children found on those grounds. Okay, you got to have a plan. You can't just start digging up all the schools. Now, I understand why there's a concern for that, because if you say, okay, there's 215 dead kids that have been here for God knows how long, who knows what else is there, and I agree with that fully. But to say, let's go dig up every schoolyard, I would hope that the government of Canada would make a plan at least. To not just excavate everything, because if you do that, you're going to find a lot of stuff from God knows how long ago, or maybe even very recently. Who knows, right? The next thing is that Bill Gates is going to build a next generation nuclear facility in Wyoming. I don't want anything to do with that guy building anything anywhere. But again, if he's got the money and the power, no matter how disliked he is, then I guess that's what's going to happen. But, I want to see what this next generation facility entails, right? The next thing is that Danish parliament has approved a law to deport asylum seekers. Again, you can call this nationalist, you can call this far right, what have you, but it's their country. They do what they want. Similar to the Arizona state death penalty issue we spoke about a handful of minutes ago. The next thing, and this is what I find very peculiar, folks, is that former head of the CDC, Robert Redfield, said that he received death threats from fellow scientists after saying on CNN he thinks the virus came from a lab. So Dr. Redfield, the former head of the CDC, who did an interview with CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who a lot of you probably didn't watch, and I don't watch either, but I watched it just for the sake of brushing up for today's episode. He said full on, he goes, listen, he goes, because I'm now the ex-head of the CDC, he goes, I have to watch my words and all that, but he said, he goes, my personal opinion is that it came from a lab. He goes, I don't have any evidence to show you today, like saying that to CNN in this interview, he said, to prove that. But he goes, keep in mind, he goes, I've been in virology my whole life. My hypothesis, he said, is that, he goes, it did come from a lab. So again, the one thing I want to point out too that I also want to make very clear is that it's very, very peculiar to me that, you know, when CNN does that interview, it's fine. But if we were to do that interview, or we were to do something of the sort, it's misinformation, or it's spreading conspiracy theories, right? So again, notice how these theories are conspiracy theories until one of the mainstream media or establishment or deep state networks, if you want to call it, picks up on it first, and then all of a sudden everybody else can talk about it. It's kind of like you have to wait till the king or the queen says it's okay, and then you can do it. Like, what a joke, right? But anyways, he was receiving death threats from fellow scientists. I mean, that's because of his statements on that interview. That's incredible. Death threats from fellow scientists. I want to know what scientists that are supposed to be, you know, forward thinking, and I get it. Nobody's perfect, but to give death threats, to even imply a death threat is serious, but to give a death threat, you know? So ultimately, I mean, wow. I want to know what scientists are saying, what scientists gave him death threats. Seriously. And if any of them are working in the government, what the hell is going on there? Like, that's, I mean, this just goes to show the polarization of things. That's, I mean, many people have said that Carl Sagan, if he were alive today, he'd be rolling in his grave, or he'd be flipping out at the scientific community at how close-minded they are. We speak about this all the time on this show, and you all know that. I'm not saying scientists are wrong, but they're very much close-minded until they discover something else, then all of a sudden it's, oh, no, it turns out it wasn't that. Like, I don't know. Anyways, you guys know what I'm saying. The next thing is that Russia plans to exit from all dollar investments and assets and will be solely invested in gold, yuan, euros, and the pound, according to the Russian finance minister as of today. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. Look, there's so many different angles to this particular scenario here. It could be Putin's form of waging war on the West and certain countries around the world and things like this. It could also be a very, very unique strategy, if you will. The problem here, though, is that I don't know what angle this is being taken. Is Putin taking a calculated risk? Does he know things, which I'm sure he does, but does he know things coming down the pipeline with regards to the US dollar? Does he see something coming? It could be so many things, folks. It's not even two-sided. It's a multi-pronged analysis at this point, because whether you like Putin or not, he's smart, he's cunning, it's true. Unless this is a major misstep, which it could be as well too, but, you know, I'd be interested to see, you know, the long-term, not necessarily effects, but the long-term reasons as to why this was done. The next thing is that Germany has denied Russian airlines permission for incoming flights in a sort of tit-for-tat move response to Moscow blocking the Lufthansa airlines from flying into Russia. Again, like I said, it's strategy. No matter what country, what time of the day, no matter what time of the year or whatever, it's a tit-for-tat chess game. This is, you know, I'm happy to see people are realizing it's simply a chess game. As to who's good or who's bad, it's all about perspective, right? But the next thing is that Twitter, I was going to say Twitter is trying an undo tweet version of the platform on their Twitter Blue subscription service. Okay, pardon my English here, but fuck that. And basically what this is before you send the tweet, it asks you, are you sure you want to send the tweet or something like this. This was something Joe Rogan mentioned to Jack Dorsey and Vijay Gad, which is the lawyer of Twitter, when Tim Pool was on there just grilling them. Why you'd have to pay for that, I don't know. Last time I checked, Twitter was I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still used by hundreds of millions of people, but last time I checked, it's not doing as well as it was. Why would you want, like, I mean, to start a subscription service, fine. I mean, I'm not gonna, it's capitalism, it's business. Whether you're a big company or a small company, you want to open a subscription service, that's just business. But at the same time, to say, like, you want to pay for the ability to undo a tweet, or to question you, or, you know, saying, are you sure you want to tweet this? Like, what? Why not just make it free? Anyways, maybe I'm missing something here, but and the final thing is that, okay, I wanted to end this with the UFO report. According to Lou Elizondo, the former head of the $20 million program in the Pentagon, classified at the time, that was looking into UFOs and all that, the UFO report that's supposed to come out later this month, which again was supposed to come out, what's today, the 3rd, was supposed to come out 2 days ago. He said it's going to be very underwhelming, extremely underwhelming. He said also it's only going to be like anywhere from a 13 to 17 page report. Again, I think Rubio, in my personal opinion, folks, I think Marco Rubio, who is the head of the committee that is looking into this, I think he stuck his nose in a little bit much, and he realized, oh shit, this is dead serious, and he's been, I don't want to say he's been threatened, but I think he definitely knows more than the public, that's for sure, and he definitely knows aliens exist, in my humble opinion. With that being said, though, again, this guy Lou Elizondo, he's been the real deal from the start, it seems. With that being said, he also did say that if disclosure doesn't come in a timely fashion, he's going to consider running for Congress. This is going to be interesting, right? Because a guy like that, if you have him killed, it's only going to confirm, at least for people like yourself and myself, the cover-up of this UFO thing. But again, I don't think they would have him killed. I think his image is too public now. But at the same time, if they really want to make him disappear, they'll do it. So a congressional run could trouble that. We'll see what happens if he does end up running. So that's it for today. I know it was quite a bit of an episode, lots to cover, and we'll catch all of you later on. Cheers.